Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this journey to understanding the basics of NLP. Once you have a good understanding of the fundamentals, that is, the premises of human potential and how to access a state of excellence, you can begin to really use NLP in almost every aspect of your everyday life. So, let's get started. NLP is the art and science of personal excellence. It started in the early 70s with the collaboration of John Grinder and Richard Bandler, who were both at the University of California, Santa Cruz. They studied three top therapists, Fritz Perls, Virginia Satir, and Milton Erickson. Their intention was not to start a new school of psychotherapy, but to identify patterns used by outstanding therapists and pass them on to others. In fact, they didn't concern themselves with theories at all. They produced models of successful therapy that worked in practice and could be taught. The model was eventually called Neuro-Linguistic Programming, a somewhat cumbersome title that covers three simple ideas. The neuro component acknowledges the fundamental idea that all behavior stems from our neurological processes of sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch, and feeling. We experience the world through our five senses. Our neurology covers not only our invisible thought processes, but also our visible physiological reactions to ideas and events. The linguistic part of the title indicates that we use language to order our thoughts and behavior and to communicate with others. The programming refers to ways we choose to organize our ideas and actions to produce results. NLP deals with the structure of human subjective experiences, how we organize what we see, hear, and feel, and how we edit and filter the outside world through our senses. It also explores how we describe it in language and how we act, both intentionally and unintentionally. Whatever the outside world is really like, we use our senses to explore and map it. This is what the quote on the slide means. The world is an infinity of possible sense impressions, and we are able to perceive only a very small part of it. That part we can perceive is further filtered by our unique experiences, culture, language, beliefs, values, interests, and assumptions. Everyone lives in their unique reality built from their sense impressions and individual experiences of life, and we act on the basis of what we perceive our model of the world. Very narrow beliefs, interests, and perceptions will make the world impoverished, predictable, and dull. The very same world can be rich and exciting. The difference lies not in the world, that is the territory, but in the filter through which we perceive it, the map. We have many natural, useful, and necessary filters. Language is a filter. It is a map of our thoughts and experiences removed a further level from the real world. Think for a moment what the word beauty means to you. No doubt you have memories and experiences, internal pictures, sounds, and feelings that let you make sense of the word. Equally, someone else will have different memories and experience and will think about the word in a different way. Who is right? Both of you, each within your own reality. The word is not the experience it describes, yet people will fight and sometimes even die believing the map is the territory. Our beliefs also act as filters, causing us to act in certain ways and to notice some things at the expense of others. To use NLP, you do not have to change any of your beliefs or values, but simply be curious and prepared to experiment. All generalizations about people are lies to somebody, because everyone is unique. So NLP does not claim to be objectively true. It is a model, and models are meant to be useful. There are some basic ideas of NLP that are very useful. I invite you to behave as if they are true and notice the difference that makes. By changing your filters, you can change your world. Some of the NLP basic filters are often referred to as behavioral frames. These are ways of thinking about how you act. The first is an orientation toward outcomes rather than problems. This means finding out what you and others want, finding what resources you have, and using these resources to move toward your goal. The problem orientation is often referred to as the blame frame. This means analyzing what is wrong in great detail. It means asking questions like, why do I have this problem? How does it limit me? Whose fault is it? These sorts of questions do not usually lead anywhere useful. Asking them will leave you feeling worse than when you started and does nothing towards solving the problem. The second frame is to ask how rather than why questions. How questions will get you an understanding of the structure of the problem. Why questions are likely to get you justifications and reasons without changing anything. The third frame is feedback versus failure. There is no such thing as failure, only results. The results can be used as feedback, helpful corrections, or a splendid opportunity to learn something you had not noticed. Failure is just a way of describing a result you didn't want. You can use the results you get to redirect your efforts. Feedback keeps the goal in view. Failure is a dead end. Two very similar words, yet they represent two totally different ways of thinking. A fourth frame is to consider possibilities rather than necessities. Again, this is a shift in focus. Look at what you can do, what choices are available, rather than the constraints of a situation. Often the barriers are less formidable than they appear. Finally, NLP adopts an attitude of curiosity and fascination rather than making assumptions. This is a very simple idea and has profound consequences. Young children learn tremendously quickly, and they do it by being curious about everything. They don't know that they don't know, so they're not worried about looking stupid if they ask a question. Another useful idea is that we all have or can create the inner resources we need to achieve our goals. You are more likely to succeed if you act as if this were true rather than act the opposite. Although we can consciously take in only a very small amount of information the world offers us, we notice and respond to much more without being aware. Our conscious mind is very limited and seems able to keep track of a maximum of 7 variables or pieces of information at one time. This idea was outlined in 1956 by the American psychologist George Miller in a classic paper called The Magic Number 7, plus or minus 2. It was originally believed that these pieces of information did not have a fixed size. In a recent article published in the New York Times, it was reported that Miller's theory has been refined. It is now understood that the capacity of short-term memory depends on several factors, including age, attention, and the type of information presented. For instance, long words like onomatopoeia and reciprocate take up more memory span than short words like cat and ball. Grouping smaller bits of information into a meaningful unit, like a word of many syllables or an abstract concept, is called chunking, and our ability to retain information decreases as the chunk becomes more complex. Psychologists now believe that we can recall about 4 chunks of information at a time, which works out to approximately 6 letters, 5 one-syllable words, and 7 digits. Nonetheless, our conscious mind, that is short-term memory or present moment consciousness, is limited in its capacity to hold information, either from the internal world of our thoughts or from the external world. Our unconscious, by contrast, is all the life-giving processes of our body, all that we have learned, our past experiences, and all that we might notice but do not in the present moment. The notion of conscious and unconscious is central to the model of how we learn. In NLP, something is conscious when it is present moment awareness. Something is unconscious when it is not in the present moment awareness. We live in a culture that believes that we do most of what we do consciously, but in reality, most of what we do unconsciously. The traditional view is that learning is a skill divided into 4 stages. First, there is unconscious incompetence. Not only do you not know how to do something, but you don't know. Never having driven a car, for example, you have no idea what it's like. So you start to learn. You very soon discover your limitations. You have some lessons and consciously attend to all the instruments, steer, coordinate the clutch, and watch the road. It demands all your attention. You are not yet competent, and you keep on the back streets. This is the stage of conscious incompetence, when you grind the gears, oversteer, and give cyclists heart attacks. Although this stage is uncomfortable, especially for cyclists, it is the stage when you learn the most. This leads to the stage of conscious competence. You can drive the car, but it takes all your concentration. You have learned the skill, but you have not yet mastered it. Lastly, and the goal of the endeavor, is unconscious competence. All those little patterns that you learn so painstakingly blend together into one smooth unit of behavior. Then you can listen to the radio, enjoy the scenery, and hold a conversation at the same time as driving. Your conscious mind sets the outcome and leaves it to your unconscious mind to carry it out, freeing your attention for other things. If you practice something for long enough, you will reach this fourth stage and form habits. At this point, the skill has become unconscious. However, the habits may not be the most effective ones for the task. Our filters have caused us to miss some important information en route to unconscious competence. Now that you know the 4 stages of learning, and you find that you mastered a skill with errors, you can unlearn the behavior by going backward through the learning stages to conscious competence. You need to unlearn before relearning in order to build new choices and more efficient patterns. The same thing happens in NLP. We already have communication and learning skills. NLP offers to refine your skills and give you more choices and more flexibility about using them. Communication is a multifaceted word that covers just about any interaction with others: casual conversation, persuading, teaching, and negotiating. Communication is a cycle or loop that involves at least 2 people. When you communicate with another person, you perceive their response and react with your own thoughts and feelings. Your ongoing behavior is generated by your internal responses to what you see and hear. It is only by paying attention to the other person that you have any idea at all about what to say or do next. Your communication partner is responding to your behavior in the same way. Communication is so much more than the words we say. These form only a small part of our expressiveness as human beings. Research shows that in a presentation before a group of people, 55% of the impact is determined by your body language, posture, gestures, and eye contact, 38% by your tone of voice, and only 7% by the content, the actual words you use in your presentation. The exact figures will differ in different situations, and clearly body language and tonality make an enormous difference to the impact and meaning of what we say. To be an effective communicator, act on the principle that the meaning of the communication is the response you get. It is estimated that your brain receives about 4 billion nerve impulses every second from the external stimuli in your environment. Of the 4 billion bits of information, you're only consciously aware of about 2,000 bits of all the potential information. To take it and process more of this information would either drive you crazy or be such a distraction that you couldn't function. What happens to all the other information? It's filtered from your conscious awareness by deleting, for example, how your shirt feels on your back, distorting, or generalizing. What you actually delete, distort, and generalize depends on your beliefs, language, decisions, values, experiences, and other meta-programs that we'll get into in more depth at a later time. Now, take a minute to ponder the magnitude of how perceptions are formed. Your filtering system directly influences our internal representation of an event or experience, which then generates an emotional state, happy, sad, angry, which influences your physiological response, and finally your behavioral reaction. When people argue about events or situations, each of them insisting that their position is correct is a result of different perceptions. In NLP, we can use our knowledge of the communication model to change internal representations, emotional states, and behavioral outcomes. The next units will provide us with opportunities to do just that, in ourselves as well as with others.